the first question for either one of you. What spiritual disciplines, practices, and traditions have been most helpful to you in your personal growth and the well-being of your family? So what spiritual traditions or disciplines?
Well, I was raised in the Christian faith. My parents made sure I was a pretty good scholar by the time I was 18. And that spiritual foundation for me has served me well all my life. From both my parents, has seen me through, all the ups and downs, successes, failures, the whole thing everybody goes through. But my own Christian faith has been a steady source of anchor for me all the years of my life. And I thank my mother and my father one more time for giving me that incredible spiritual heritage and foundation. It served me well.
With me, it was my grandmother. She was the only one that was religious in the family. My father was a Catholic until he left when I was 9. My mother was Church of England. I played on the Presbyterian team, but the Lutherans won the championship, so I switched. I was Episcopalian at the Naval Academy and married a Southern Baptist, and Billy Graham said, "What denomination are you?" And I said, "I was hoping you might give me some suggestions." So I think the thing to do is to study deeply your religious belief, and the scriptures are what we all use anyway, and try to reshape them, but there's nothing new under the sun. And I think the most important thing for me is when they ask me about my Christian faith, I just say, "Come and live with me, and you'll know more about me if you live with me than what I could tell you," because so many people preach it, but it's really important to live it. And I, like Jim, is that your mom and your grandmother, and those run silent and deep through the years.
Okay, this one's for Dennis. How did you get your first book from the drawer to the public? Can you give me any advice to get my book from thought to page to publisher? And then it also says Jim too. So we got both of you for this one.
Well, I think the important thing is to believe that the author is deserving to be published, and don't try to write a Picasso as your book. A book is not a Picasso, it's just a book. And you'll write more than one, so you can't write the book you want to write. You need to write a book that people would benefit by reading. So keep the reader in mind, and when you're writing anything, always write it for what they're going to learn or benefit rather than something you want to say, because the publishers eliminated all of my best stories. So I think the thing to do is to believe you're deserving of being published, and then making sure that when you talk to publishers that rejection is only a temporary thing. It's not important at all. And then self-publish. It's not even a last resort now. In fact, publishers are just glorified printers today. And unless somebody really has the ability to talk to an audience and build a following, they just print. And they do people who they know are going to gain a following through their own marketing and promotion. So be willing to promote and market yourself. The only other thing I'll say is the best singers will never be sung. The best songs will never be heard because they didn't have an agent. So marketing is really important.
What about the discipline of getting the book done, or even producing an audio program or that type of thing? Because a lot of times people say, well, I wish I had the time or whatever. Do you have a certain structure? Do you do a little bit at a time, or do you go in and do it, 2 or 3 weeks? What's your process for developing your content?
The only thing I do is, instead of taking a vacation to watch other people having fun, it's like a term paper. A book is a term paper with an attitude. You really have to do it all at once. You have to lock yourself up and have them push food under the door and growl at them. And you just have to do it. And you can't write it over a long period of time because you lose your obsession and your train of thought. So you really have to be like a college kid with the term paper and carve out. You can write a book in less than 30 days, no question about it. So you can even write it in 2 weeks, but you think about it for about a year and then write it in about 14 days.
This is kind of a coaching question. And if you were to have an opportunity to be with somebody, say, for example, an Olympic athlete or that type of thing, and you only had 2 sessions with them to turn their life around and point them in the right direction, how would you structure those, and what would be the key elements of what you would talk to them to put them in the right direction?
Jim's better. You're definitely better coaching than I am.
I'm not a specialist on, Olympic athletes, but I've done most all of mine not person to person, but by group. I started doing sales training when I got into a little network marketing business age 25. And I built a huge organization, finally became vice president of the company. That's when Bob Cummings was one of my partners back in those days. And so most all of my coaching and mentoring is done by classes, lectures, seminars, and all of that turned into books and tapes and videos, that sort of thing. But one-on-one is an extraordinary specialty. And now, I'm finally engaged in that with the help of others, coaching more one-on-one. But mine has been mostly by group.
I've got one idea on that. I had a UPS driver tell me he always wanted to be a rock star. And he had 2 children. He was only 24. And I said, "Where are you singing now?" He said, "No, I'm driving this truck and I have 2 children at home." I said, "No, let me ask you this. Whatever you want to do, you must be doing now. Because there isn't a single person who wants to be in a profession that isn't already in it. So if you're going to speak, you need to speak all the time. Lunches, Kiwanis, Rotary, women's organizations, everywhere, every time, and tape every one. And then one day you'll get an audition tape where everything will work right. But you must be now doing what it is you want to be doing, or you'll always live on someday aisle, and it'll be on layaway."
Excellent. That's what happened for me. After my entrepreneurial experience, making my first fortune, moving to Beverly Hills, where else would a boy from South Idaho move, right, if he had a fortune? And sure enough, when I got there, one of my friends says, "I belong to the Rotary Club. You've got to come and tell your success story. If I arranged a luncheon, would you come and share your story?" He said, "We'll call it Idaho Farm Boy Makes It to Beverly Hills." I said, "Sounds good to me." So I went and did this little 25-minute talk, and that started a whole brand new career for me. Other clubs started calling, saying, "We'd like to have Jim Rohn come, do a breakfast meeting, do a luncheon meeting." Then once in a while I do a high school class, college class, all for free. And one day a man who heard my talk 2 or 3 times said, "I've got this little company going. I've got some management and salespeople. If you would come and talk about your success formula, I'd be happy to pay you." And I thought, incredible. Could I really share my success story and get paid? Not being in business, which I had been before. And he said, "I will pay." Sure enough, I did the talk, got paid, and that started me on a whole new journey of corporate speaking, business meeting speaking, and finally came the idea of having a public seminar, people selling tickets, like we're doing this weekend. But that's how I started, Dennis. Accepting every invitation that I possibly could, enjoying it very much, little clubs, service clubs, high schools, colleges, wherever, to tell my story. And that led to the next step and to the next step. And all of that, started about 44 years ago.
My mom is still amazed that I get paid to do what she told me all those years to stop.
Yeah.
They pay you to talk? Figure that out. Here's the next question. Could you take a minute and talk about your diet? Talk about your diet. How you eat, what you eat.
Well, I believe in fiber-based carbohydrate. I believe in lean source protein and plenty of water. I've been around a lot of microbiologists and immunologists, and Jonas Salk was one of my mentors. And I really believe I don't believe in the Atkins diet and this diet, the Palm Beach diet, the Beverly Hills diet, the seafood and eat it diet. Diets don't work because the hypothalamus area of the brain has a satiety center, and the body knows when you're starving it, and it saves nuts for the winter. So it preserves calories if you're starving it, and it burns them if you're not, and the body knows. So I think the best thing to do is to really get some discipline into what you do and try to be very sane about it, and definitely not eat any bagels or sugar cereal, and don't spike your insulin in the morning, because if you spike your insulin, by having anything that's sugar-filled, you'll have insulin resistance buildup, and that's why we have an incidence of diabetes and obesity, because we tend to eat this stuff that spikes the insulin all day. And stay away from, all I say is too many trips to the Golden Arches will give you an early arrival at the pearly gates. So don't give your kids a fast food benefit after their athletic session, because you're really creating cardiovascular disease in junior high school.
Here goes the McDonald's sponsorship. Okay, here we go.
Well, I think I mentioned in the class this morning, right? My parents, my mother especially, started early in her study of health and nutrition, extended her life at least 20 years. When my mama died, almost 80, the doctor said, "Mr. Rohn, the walls of your mother's heart were paper thin." He said, how she lived the last 20 plus years is absolutely, seems to me, to be impossible. But that was the reason why. Mama was a fanatic. Starting with the apple a day, simple stuff. I've modified it a little to apple juice, apple pie, and I'm sure Mama would say, no, that's not what I meant, apple pie. No, apple a day. But all of the rest. My mother studied from my grandmother the old Hay system of the proper combination of foods, as well as watching your diet. So I do all of that, but then I do all the rest, being involved in health and nutrition all of my life. And so you've got to underline now the word health and nutrition. Nutrition is only one part of good health. The rest is get plenty of rest, fresh air, exercise, plenty of sleep, and all the rest. And I really try to follow that as best I can. Sometimes my schedule's a little heavy and it's difficult, but fortunately for me, I can sleep on the plane. In fact, I can sleep most anywhere. And 5 or 6 hours is all I need of sleep, so that's fortunate. If you travel like I do and can't sleep on the airplane, you are really in trouble. But then I do all the exercises, modified versions when I travel, by just staying at it. And what I mentioned earlier today is really important, a physical support system, that takes the mind where it wants to go, takes the body into duties it needs to perform. Just stay healthy. And what I would do is make it a study and a practice all the rest of your life, study and practice. Depending on certain situations and age, you might modify, but always study, practice how to stay healthy. And if you've got a young family, pass it on to your children best you can. And the payoff is extraordinary.
Well, Jim and I both have to say that too, because we're both in our 70s. And when you get to be in your 70s, you really look for double rainbows, and you want to live as long as you can. I want to watch my great-grandchildren graduate from high school with their parents paying for their college tuition.
I like that, Dennis.
I mean, really, the proof is in the pudding. It's amazing, Dennis and Jim and Zig's another example of guys that are going at paces that you and I could only imagine, at their age, and just still so vibrant, and it's a great example.
Zig's out there jogging every morning.
Yeah.
We did a trip a couple of years ago to Australia. He and I and Tommy Hopkins, the three of us, did a tour of Australia. Zig's out there every morning running, I don't know how many miles, several. Zig says, I even jog when it's 35 below zero. Wow. In my hotel room as I look out the window at the snow. Just underline this, you got to do whatever it takes to stay healthy and to stay well, because you got to make those last 30 years of your life, good health, so that you can enjoy and have a quality of life that is, going to give you the lifestyle that you want.
And we're living longer in ill health than ever before. So the quality of life has really not been there even though they've extended life, and you really want to make it quality. That's why Jim and I are looking to the market in China, because in China they revere old people. So there's always a place that wants to hear you, because the older you get in China, they say you are so wise, which means that you're still lucky to be around.
Okay, how about this one? What was the turning point in your life, or turning points? As you look back over your life, were there a few pointed moments in time when you said, yeah, my life took a big direction that way, a change in direction?
Well, mine, anyone that studied, my books and tapes and videos and all the rest, it's this Mr. Earl Schoaf that I talked about when I was 25 years old. I was doing okay. I wasn't destitute. But, once in a while the creditors were calling, and I was embarrassed that I hadn't made more progress in 6 years from age 19 to 25. I wanted to do extremely well for my family. My parents gave me this incredible unique spiritual foundation, so I had that. But economically, I just hadn't gotten to any breakthroughs. I was willing to work hard, that was not my problem. Then I meet this extraordinary man by the name of Earl Schoaf, and the rest is history. That was a turning point for me.
My turning point came at the age of 9 when my father, in an alcoholic stupor, came in to say goodnight and goodbye at the same time. But he had blown my light out every night by telling me that when he blew the light out in my room, it went out all over the world, because the only world I'd ever know is that which I saw through my eyes. And he said, I'm a loser, but you can be a winner, because you don't have to be like me, you can be different from me. And he left me as the man of the family, and then two things happened. First, my grandmother and I planted a plumcot tree, and a plumcot tree is part plum, part apricot, and when the fruit comes out, it's pink. So it's not as purple as a plum and not as orange as an apricot, but whatever you plant will come out the way you plant it. So my grandmother just said, you don't even have to plant weeds. They arrive quite of their own on the wind. And so I began to understand that seeds of greatness were attitudes and early inputs. And then a soldier was interested in my mother, because my father left during World War II. And he was trying to lather me up and make me like him. But I was protecting my mom from these guys that were stationed nearby. And he promised to take me fishing the next morning, but he'd been drinking, and I wasn't sure whether he'd reach his commitment as he promised. And I went out my window with a drop line and a packed lunch, and he never showed. And my mother said, come back in the house, he's not going to come, you're not going to go fishing in a boat. He just was hoping to make you think he was going to go. And I said, well, wait a minute, I got my lunch and my drop line, so I traded my bicycle for a one-man rubber life raft, and I paddled out in the bay, and I caught fish. And I decided when I was 9 that every incoming call wants something, and every outgoing call creates something, and that no one will take you fishing, but if you're ready to go, you have to go. So I became proactive as of age of 9, realizing that I didn't have a father to take me there, so I'd have to take me there myself.
Wow. Fantastic.
Got time for one last question. Are the keys to success any different now than they were 20, 50, or 100 years ago?
No, certainly not. The fundamentals are always the same, and there's only so many. If somebody says, I'm going to teach you today the 50 fundamentals, you would be a little suspicious. There's like 6, 7, 8, 10, 5, 7 strategies for wealth and happiness, and they haven't changed. And people's desires are the same, generation after generation. They want a good job, they want to be able to support their family, and someday retire with dignity, looking after their family as best they can, do something meaningful in their life. Those are the basics. And then what Dennis and I try to do is to tell people that taking care of yourself and your family and getting a job and do all of that is wonderful. But why not do the extra study to see if you might have some genius inside of your head that could be tapped for some above and beyond kind of activity and productivity and service to your fellow man, whatever it might be. And that's really what our seminars, lectures, teaching, training is all about. No matter where you are, why not read the next book, attend the next class, be inspired by the next story, to see if you couldn't call up some extra skills, disciplines, desire, ambition, whatever, that would take you to another level of extraordinary living. That's the key.
I agree completely. Unfortunately, we live in a skin deep, which is an oxymoron, skin deep society that is more narcissistic and into immediate gratification, and you see it everywhere. And as you get older, you become philosophical, and you begin to realize that no society has ever survived its own success. And when you get on top, you rest on laurels and you can't three-peat. Hardest thing to do is three-peat, because when you get up there and you got the rings on your finger, you lose the motivation and hunger to remember and do what you did to make you there. And so unfortunately, unless we learn from history, we're bound to repeat it. And right now we're very close in America to becoming slightly Roman. If you look at the partying and the kind of reality television and the violence, you see a society that is no longer hungry, except in the immigrant areas and the inner cities, and you find people who are more interested in indulgence than into pioneering. And so don't get caught in skin-deep success and in media-made celebrity. And it's frustrating sometimes to see people who have style but no substance. But you have to be substantive with a flair today. So you really do have to be able to promote, because marketing really is necessary in success, because everyone's trying to put themselves up into the media spotlight. And unfortunately, if you're more bizarre, you tend to get more media attention. So be willing to stay with those principles that have always been the same. And you may not be as covered by media, but at least rather than having the adoration of the masses, you'll have the respect of one child. It's more important to have the respect of a child than the adoration of the masses.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis and Jim, for this time, for
Pleasure.
the folks who are the Platinum members. I would just let you know that we are going to start back in the other room in 11 minutes. So let's give Jim and Dennis a good round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The announcement that I have for you is about the teenager session tonight. Now, the teenager session is geared toward teenagers, but we want to invite everybody in here. We're going to have Jim and Dennis, and Charlie Tremendous Jones is also going to be there with us, and I'm going to be leading that session. What I'm going to ask is, after that break in the evening, is that we let the teenagers come and sit up front. So Platinums for that session only. We're going to ask for the adults to move back and let the kids and the teenagers move up and sit in the front, and then the adults can fill in after that. So we want to give them a special opportunity to be able to be up front and really interact with us as we go through some things. That's going to be called the Winning Generation. And that's going to be an exciting time for us, starting at about 5:15. Okay, so let's get back to it. We're going to get started with the afternoon session. And, this might be trouble.
How you doing, my son?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
Quite a lot of people here. You know, I normally don't like to do things with this many people around. I've come here because I ran across a man many years ago, and well, I guess it's time to settle accounts with Jimmy the Mouth Rohn.
Godfather,
Please, forget the formalities. Just call me Your Excellency. It seems that, as you may know, Jimmy has quite an impact on the family.
Jim's a family guy?
Well, he's been responsible for the advancement of countless organizations across the country.
He's in the
Somebody get this guy some water. He seems to have a stutter here, I think. Let me help you out here.
Thank you very much.
The reason I've come here is about I'm here about a hit.
A hit?
Well, you know, Jimmy, he talks a lot. And, well, I just don't think he really has ever gotten what should be coming to him. So I'm here to declare to the world what a hit he is. What a top-of-the-heap guy he is. Cream of the crop, king of the hill. That's all I wanted to say. Will somebody get a doctor for this guy? He looks a little pale. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Godfather. Appreciate that. You never know what you're going to get at the weekend event. But we do know what we're going to get right now. We're going to go back for the afternoon to the great Jim Rohn. Jim, let's welcome him back to the stage.
Wow, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Wow, thank you. Appreciate all this recognition and applause. Thanks for the welcome. I must honestly say to you, I deserve it. Nobody knows better than I do, right? You know, all the twists and turns and the years and all the stuff that finally got me to this place. So I appreciate that. You know, it's one thing to receive an honor. It's the next thing to be able to deserve it. So thank you very much. My daughter Linda, who's given me 2 grandchildren, called me on the phone one day, and I pick up the phone. She says, "Hi, Dad." I said, "Hi, Linda." She said, "Just a moment." And it sounded like she put the phone down on the table. And then I heard this clapping. And she picked up the phone. She said, "Dad, did you hear that?" I said, "Yes." She said, "That's in case you haven't gotten any applause lately." So when I talk to Linda later today or tomorrow, I can tell her she doesn't have to clap for me on the phone. That I got plenty of applause this weekend in Anaheim, California. So thank you very much. Okay, let's go to work. If you're ready, say, "I'm ready." Ready. How many of you have at least 2 pages of notes already? Fantastic. I wanted to finish up on personal development before we get into communication. 4 steps to success. I want to send you away with this. 4 steps to success. Number 1, good ideas. Do your research on good ideas. Be a collector of good ideas. Keep a good record of good ideas. My mentor taught me to start keeping a journal when I was 25 years old. I've been doing it now all these years. They'll be passed on to my, children, my grandchildren. If you hear a good health idea, capture it. Here's what my mentor said. This is good advice. Don't trust your memory. It's easy to say, "Oh, I'll remember that." Sure enough, the time passes and somehow it's gone. So he said, jot it down. If you don't have your journal with you, just grab a piece of paper and jot it down. Later, put it in your journal so that it becomes, attractive to sit down on a cold winter evening and go back through your journal. The ideas that changed your life, the ideas that saved your marriage, the ideas that bailed you out of bankruptcy, the ideas that helped you become successful, the ideas that, made you millions. Just what a good review. Going back over the collection of good stuff that you've gathered over the years. Be a collector of good ideas. For your life, for your business, for your relationships, for your future. Next step to success, good plans. A good plan for the day, a good plan for the future, a good health plan, a good plan for your marriage. Building anything's like building a house. You need to have a plan. Here's a good time management idea. When should you start the day? As soon as you have it finished. It's like building a house, building a life. What if you just started laying bricks and somebody says, "What are you building?" And you said, "I have no idea." See, they would come and take you away to a safe place. So you don't start the house until you finish it. Is it possible to finish the house before you start it? Yes, it would be foolish to start until you had it finished. Not a bad time management idea. Don't start the day till it's pretty well finished, at least the outline of the day. Leave some room to improvise, leave some room for extra strategy, but finish it before you start. Here's the next one that's a little more challenging. Don't start the week until you have it finished. Lay it out, structure it, then put it to work. The next one is a little tougher yet. Don't start the month until you have it finished. And the big one, it's not a bad idea toward the end of the year. Sit down with your family for the family structured things. Sit down in your business for the business things. Sit down with your financial advisor for your investments and map out the year. Properties to buy, properties to sell, places to go with your family. Lay out the year. I finally learned to do that. It was helpful with my family to show them where they appeared on my calendar. You know, I used to have my business things on there. I used to have my lectures and my seminars and, all the stuff laid out on my calendar. And guess what the children say? Where are we on the game plan? Please show us our names on the game plan. So you've got to do it for your children, do it for your spouse, right? Do it for your friends, right? Laying out the year. Now that one's pretty tough, doing a whole year, but at least have an idea, at least a skeleton outline. Before you start the year, you'll be a lot more excited about proceeding. So number one is good ideas. Number one is good plans. Here's a big one that's really challenging, learning to handle the passing of time. It takes time to build a career. It takes time to make changes. Give your project time. Give your people time. If you're working with people, give them time to learn, grow, change, develop, produce. Here's the big one. Give yourself time. It takes time to master something new. It takes time to make altered changes and a refinement in philosophy as well as in activity. Give yourself time to learn, time to get it, time to start some momentum, time to finally achieve. It's easy to be impatient with yourself, right? I remember when I first tried to learn to tie my shoes, right? The shoestrings. Wow, it seemed like it was taking me forever. Finally, I got it. And it didn't take forever, but it seemed like for a while, I'll never learn. I get it backwards. The bow goes up and down instead of across, right? How do you straighten that out? Finally, I got it. Mama taught me a little bit about playing the piano, right? Here's the left-hand scales. I got that, that's easy. Now she said, here's the right-hand scales. I got that, that's easy. Now she said, today we're gonna play both hands at the same time. I said, well, how could you do that? One at a time was easy, but at the same time, finally looking at this hand, finally I got it, finally to where I could play the scales with both hands. Then I remember the day she said, now we're gonna read the music and play both hands. I thought, well, you can't do all that. But sure enough, I'm looking at the music, looking at each hand, a little confused at first, but finally I got into mastering. It took a little time, right? Read the music, play both hands. Then I remember the day she said, now we're gonna watch the audience read the music, play both hands. I thought, well, now that's going too far. How could you possibly do that? But see, adding them one at a time and giving myself time to master one before we got to the next one, sure enough, I got to where I could watch the audience, read the music, and play both hands. So give yourself time. You can become a better pro. You can better master the art of parenting. You can better master the art of managing time, conserving resources, working together as a partner. Give yourself time. Here's the next one, step to success, learning to solve problems. Business problems, family problems, personal problems, financial problems, emotional problems. I mean, the list is unending. Challenges for us all. Here's the best way to treat a problem: an opportunity to grow, change if you have to, modify if you must, discard an old philosophy that wasn't working well for a new one. When I first met Mr. Schoaf, he said, show me your current economic plan that you're working on. And I said, I don't have any current economic plan except, keeping my head above water. I mean, that was my current economic plan. He said, well, without plans, it isn't going to change. So why not give up the old way of doing it with your fingers crossed, hoping for the best? Maybe the Democrats will get elected and everything will change for the better. Why don't you modify that old philosophy that hasn't gotten you where you want to go? And let's try some new strategy. Learning from the old, trying some new. And I did that. solving that problem of amending my philosophy that hadn't gotten me where I wanted to go that first 6 years. Once I made those changes, I became a multimillionaire over the next 6, 7 years. The change was so startling, I couldn't believe it myself. But if you make the changes, right, things will start to change. Here was the best promise my mentor ever gave me. He said, Mr. Rohn, if you will change, everything will change for you. Wow, I took that to heart. And sure enough, the more I changed for the better, the more I changed from having a poor day to a good day, from lack of discipline to discipline, the more I changed, giving up old habits, acquiring new ones, the more my life changed, my income changed, everything changed. So, solving problems, treat them as opportunities to amend errors in judgment. Here's the formula for success and the formula for failure. Here's the formula for failure. A few errors in judgment repeated every day. Why would we repeat an error in judgment another day? Here's why. Disaster doesn't usually fall on you at the end of that first day. If you suffer dire, disastrous consequences the first day of mistakes, see, we would quickly change. I mean, overnight, we'd be burning the midnight oil, how to avoid and change it all so that these disasters don't happen again. But failure is subtle. Failure just takes you down the road you really don't want to go, but it doesn't seem like the consequences are going to be severe at the end of the first day, at the end of the first week. But you can't let yourself get faked out. The guy says, I've been eating junk food for 30 days and look how healthy I am. See, he's faked out. He's misguided. He doesn't understand. You can't judge just after 30 days. I remember once I was talking to the kids about, judging whether something is, right or wrong, to do it or not to do it. And I had a candle, and I lit this candle, and I said to the kids, I've heard that if I put my finger in this flame, this fire of the candle, that it will burn my finger. And the kid said, yes, it will. If you put your finger in this flame from the candle, it will burn your finger. I said, well, I don't really know, but I'm willing to try it. So I stuck my finger in the candle flame like this, and I said, my finger appears to be okay. And I did it again. Pulled it out, and I said, my finger appears to be okay. And they all said, no, Mr. Rohn. You can't judge whether or not the flame will burn your finger just by going like this. You've got to leave your finger in there just a little longer. I got the message. And they got the message. You can't eat junk food for a month and say, look how strong I am, because already you have started down the wrong road, but at first the consequences aren't disastrous. Your whole life isn't upside down. You haven't ruined your whole life and you're going to have a heart attack at the end of 30 days, no. But subtly, month by month, and a little more experience eating junk food, and sure enough, now the consequences would start to show. So here's what wisdom is: trying to learn early the consequences of errors in judgment, poor behavior, poor language. And then try to learn from others that have gone down a disastrous road, and sure enough, they suffered the consequences, and you say, wow, then I'm going to change direction because I don't want those consequences. That's called being doubly smart. Doubly smart, learning from errors in judgment. Now, here's the secret to success. A few simple disciplines practiced every day. Now you're on the road to success. A few errors in judgment repeated. It's easy to repeat. But a few simple disciplines practiced every day. And you can turn anything around. Once you see that you're suffering either early consequences or severe consequences, all you have to do now is shut down that route, pick another destination and start going that way with some easy disciplines that day by day gather momentum, and now one success leads to another, leads to another. Here's what we call that: disciplines. Easy disciplines. And then remember this in your personal development quest: all disciplines affect each other. Every discipline affects the rest. Every lack of discipline affects the rest. Every discipline you neglect affects the rest. What's interesting about success is starting a new discipline, a couple of new disciplines, and sure enough, once you've gained just a little bit of success in a couple of new disciplines, it'll inspire you to clean up the rest. It'll inspire you to fine-tune all of your other disciplines. Each new affects the rest. Each lack of discipline affects the rest. So starting on this journey of new disciplines, solving problems, going from errors in judgment to easy disciplines that can change it all. And if you start that journey, it doesn't take long for new signs of success to appear. I got such great results that first year that I made these incredible changes, learning extra skills, putting together extra disciplines, working harder on myself than on my job. The early success, the early signs of the fact that I was going to arrive at a more positive destination, I was hooked. It didn't take but a few months, less than a year, and I was hooked for life. I ask you to start that same journey. Let your new skills, new disciplines affect all of the rest and inspire you to never cease this quest for refinement of first philosophy, then activity to make your life better. Then here's the last one I wanted to cover on personal development when we ran out of time, and that's lifestyle, living well. And I'll just quickly borrow the notes from my one-day seminar sponsored by Jerry Haynes, who's been with me 29 years. Are you here, Jerry? Here, Jerry, stand up, and let's give Jerry a hand. 29 years. We're celebrating our 29th year together. Jerry helped to train Tony Robbins back in those early days when we were just getting started, Adventures in Achievement. Fantastic. Thanks for coming, Jerry. Appreciate having you here. In the seminar I do for Jerry, he does about 4 or 5 of these a year, public seminars, I touch on lifestyle. And let me just quickly give you the list, because I think it's good for this 2-day seminar, 3-day seminar. The ultimate essence of life is not a Ferrari. The ultimate essence is not a bank account. It's not $1 million. It's not being rich or wealthy. Here's the ultimate essence of life: living a good life. Even if you're a person of modest means and modest circumstances, you can really, if you wish, go to work on the refinement of your lifestyle so that you can, even with modest means, live a good life. So what are the keys to living a good life? Here's number 1, productivity. You really won't be happy if you don't produce. 6/7 of our life was to be devoted to labor and work, to produce a work of art, to produce a crop of corn, to produce a good family, to produce an enterprise. That's the essence of life in its best form. First is to be a producer. What is the reason for the seed and the soil and the sunshine and the rain and the seasons of life and its miracle? What's the reason for all of that? Here it is in a nutshell for your notes: to see what you can do with it. What's the reason for the economy that's one of the best in the world that we've created in America? The answer is to see what you could do with it. We've got books to read, and we've got classes to attend, and we've got, things to do and things to learn. And if you put it all together, you can have not only your health, but your fortune. Why not see what you can do with what you've been handed? As basic as seed and soil and sunshine and rain. Here's what all of us have: the miracle, and it's almost godlike in its potential, the ability to recreate. Only God can create the seed, the soil, the sunshine, the rain, the seasons, the miracle of life. But here's what humans can do: recreate those components into a harvest. by planting the seed, carefully taking care of it in the summer, reaping the rewards in the harvest. We call that recreation. We can't make a tree, but we can use the tree for wood to build a house, shelter for our family. It's called recreation. It's godlike in terms of potential. To recreate, to take your hours and your energy and your life and a bit of skill and create, actually recreate a career, a future, possibilities, fortune. Recreate. The key is to use it. And you won't be happy if you aren't really extending yourself. Because here's really the goal of the human adventure: the full development of all your potential. That's the goal, the full development of all your potential. Why not see how far you can go, how much you can earn, how much you can share, how much you can give? Why not see what all you could be, what you could become? That's why at my age I'm still working, traveling the world, doing what I've done for all these years, is to see what else I can become. How much stronger could I become? How much wiser could I be in delivering my message? How much more refined could I be in my working with business partners and all the rest? Why not go for that ultimate challenge, on and on, as far as you can, take it as far as you can? So number one, living a good life, productivity. Here's number two, good friends. Friendship is one of the greatest support systems in the world. Nourish it, protect it, look after it, develop it to the best of your ability. Friends are those wonderful people who know all about you and still like you, right? You got to have those. Next is your heritage. Keep your heritage alive. That's what's made America great, is a combination of a variety of heritages from all over the world. For the last 200-300 years, 300-400 years, people have been coming from all the countries of the world to America, bringing with them their gifts. Gift of language, gift of business ethics, gift of government, gift of music, gift of poetry, gift of the work ethic. These gifts were not here, they were brought here. No country has become such a depository of the gifts of the world like America has the last 300-400 years. People coming, bringing gifts. People coming, bringing gifts. And here's one of the greatest gifts you have to bring: your heritage. Customs and costume and style, poetry, language, ways, recipes, music. Keep that alive. Don't pass on the ceremonies that come from your heritage. Keep those alive. That's what makes us great. Now, I love to go back where these gifts came from. I go back to Italy. The last time I was in Rome, I had 1,000 people in my class. Someone said to whoever was going to introduce me, Jim Rohn loves the music of Andrea Bocelli, the blind opera singer from Italy. So when they introduced me and I walked out to the podium, all 1,000 of these Italians stood up and sang for me one of Andrea Bocelli's songs. It was extraordinary, in true Italian style. Tears and all the rest. So I told my grandchildren later when I got back home, here was the scene: a choir of 1,000 and an audience of 1. How about that? That's unique. But then that reminded me, this is where these gifts came from. The music, the dance, the wine, the ceremonies, the language that enriches us today. So be thankful for all of that and keep your heritage alive. Next is spirituality. We've already mentioned that. Study, practice, and teach. Next is something my parents taught that's lasted me until this day. Here it is: don't miss anything. This is a major part of lifestyle. Denis is right. Shut off the television. Go look, go see, go do. Taste the wine, eat the food. Enjoy the people. Go to the movies. The best values you can pay for is to go see a movie. Costs what, $10? $100 million to make it and only $10 to see it. Wow. Don't miss the performance. Don't miss the songs. Don't miss the lyrics. Don't miss what's happening. Go look, go see, go do. Denis was right. The average American watches television 6.5 hours a day. That's too much time. My parents did this all of my life. Don't miss anything. No matter how small the occasion, go look, go see, go do. Experience life. When my father was 93 years old, before he died, if you would have called him at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, he wouldn't be home. He's at the rodeo. He's watching the kids play softball. He's at church. He's at the performance. He's somewhere every night, age 93. My parents not only taught it, but they lived it. So go look, go see, go do, go share. I was celebrating one evening with a lady who's another one of my claims to fame, Ann Geddes. Does that name ring a bell? Ann Geddes, this superstar photographer who takes pictures of little babies and all kinds of situations. She's now become very rich and very famous. But she started coming to my seminars in Australia about 27 years ago. And the seminars changed her life, and she's been grateful ever since. We were celebrating with her and her husband and my friend Terry in Auckland, New Zealand, after she had come back from New York and made her big show. And Terry had found a bottle of Chateau Yquem, one of the finest wines in the world. I know he paid at least $600 for this bottle of wine. And we're sharing this wine with the four of us, okay? And the four of us hoping no one that we knew would come by. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to let that out, but if you would have come by, and if we would have allowed you to taste this wine, here's what you would have said. When you tasted this wine, you would have said, wow, I'll bet this wine costs $600 a bottle. That's what you would have said. Something inside of you. So make this note now, the genius is within all of us. It just needs to be exposed and developed and used. Something would have told you this is fine, even though you're not a wine connoisseur. This is fine. When you hear poetry, you say, wow, this is fine. The music, you say, this is fine music. Even though you're not a musician, something tells you inside. Now, if you miss all of that, if you don't go, hear, listen, see, then you're not tapping into this genius that can recognize something fine, whether it's the poetry of the Bible or the lyrics of a rock and roll song. Just don't miss it. Don't miss it. Elton John sings, she lived her life like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain set in. See, that's fine. You can't describe how fragile and brief life is much better than that. George Harrison used to sing when he was alive, if not for you, the winter would hold no spring. Couldn't hear a robin sing. I just wouldn't have a clue if not for you. So you can't miss that. And then you go hear it again and again and again. Let it nourish your soul and spirit. That's part of lifestyle. Okay. Living well. That's the key. Now, that finishes up personal development.